friends, family, and guests. Welcome. This is going to be an interactive session, first of all, so feel free to use the chat. Heather will help me out if there's questions popping in there. I will share some resources. I will have a takeaway link for you to take with you with some more information, because it is impossible to cover everything that there is possibly to know about hybrid events in 30 minutes. But I endeavor to give you a good teaser and some direction on where to go. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is, let's see if I can share my screen. I know that I'm spotlighted. I'm going to encourage you, if you have your device handy, to scan the QR code that you see on the screen, or you can just open a web browser and put in menti.com and the code. I'll also drop that in the chat while I'm talking. I was a part of District 1's leadership. I was a division director, actually. Yes, I was a division director when the world changed on us immediately. All of a sudden, the world shut down, and our district did not skip a beat. My home district is District 1. I'm also a member of District 100. We immediately moved all of our contests and things, and I was one part of a pioneering team that helped us to really create engaging events online. And these are some of the same things we've done for club events. For our district events, are things that we can do for our clubs. I'm going to go ahead and change that slide. Good. I see some of you liking it. This is one tool, one of many tools that I'm going to share that you can look to use to make your meetings more interactive. So if we're going to go to the next screen right now, you should be able to see a word cloud. And I'm going to ask you, go ahead and start. You can enter your responses if you did do that on your device. What word comes to mind when you think of hybrid meetings or events? So go ahead and fill those out, and I will keep talking. I'm going to go over just a few things to consider when you're looking at your hybrid events. Now, as club officers, you're probably thinking some of you are either having online meetings or hybrid meetings, or considering starting it. And it's not that scary. It's not that difficult. So it does not take a ton of equipment. Many times you can utilize the resources that already exist. So we can see things. Now, why I love this particular word cloud, as I'm talking, you can actually see things that are all the things that are coming in. This is something you could incorporate into your speeches or into different parts of your meetings as well. So the first step when we are talking about hybrid meetings and events is, one, to know your technology. What technology is your club using? Many of us are using Zoom. Some people are using Google Meet. Some people are using different software to use their meeting. Look into the features that are available to you through those platforms. Zoom has breakout rooms that we're familiar with. They have the ability to do polls and are constantly launching new features every week that you can look and use for your meetings. You want to figure out what is going to work best for your audience and for your club officer team, the people who need to actually use it. And you know what, Heather, I didn't pay attention for the timer, and I didn't start mine, so keep me honest.
Will do.
You want to be interactive. So you want to do things that are interactive for the people in the room and the people that are online. Menti is a great tool for that. If you were using something like this word cloud, this is something where you can prepare in advance. That QR code that I was showing on the screen could be displayed on the screen in person, and for people online, it could be printed on an agenda or in a program book. You could drop the link online. So both of your members, almost everyone is going to always have a smartphone these days. Everyone can interact in the same way. So you don't have a situation where the people in the room are getting a worksheet and then the people online are trying to type in the chat. Everybody can participate and see their information here. So some of the things that I see are video conferencing, convenient, complicated, flexible, internet divided meetings, nail biting. Okay, I had to turn sideways for that one. Technology challenges. Yes, these are all different things, but hopefully I'll give you some tools and you'll feel a little bit more confident about giving it a try. Now, I'm going to advance this slide to show you another cool feature is a Q&A feature. So at any time, I'm going to stop sharing, but you can start, if you have questions based off of the things that you're going to hear, go ahead and enter them here, and I'll come back to answer those questions at the end. So you can add any questions when you want to, but I'm going to go ahead and stop the share over there if I can from the machine. All right, and now I'm going to go ahead so I can see all of your wonderful faces. And feel free to use the chat as well. So next, once we understand our technology, we want to be intentional, and this requires some planning. We need to stop and think about, what do we do in our meetings, and how do we interact with the people that are online and in person? Being intentional and considering, how do we make both audiences feel involved? One of my clubs had our first hybrid meeting yesterday, and we do something we call them love notes for our meeting, where we give speakers feedback after the meetings, after their speeches. We take a minute and everybody does that. So what does that look like when one speaker is online and one person is in the room, but everybody in the room doesn't have a device? Look at what you do in your meetings and plan for them in advance. And there's a lot of tools that we can do. The primary thing is to ensure that when we're planning out, whether it's our meeting, whether it's a Toastmasters event or something else, that we want to make sure that everyone has the same experience, no matter whether they're in person or online. We want to encourage networking and give people the same opportunities, that we can turn next to the person next to us and whisper or send notes or talk or celebrate before. We want to make sure we have those options available for online and hybrid. And you can do that by having breakout rooms, all kinds of different tools that you can use as well. You want to basically ensure overall that everything has equal access. Now, as far as your setup, and again, I'm going to drop a link that you can take a look with you in your chat, and it has a couple of resources. It has several online platforms, and it's going to also include some interactive tools that you can use and play with. Menti, that I shared with you earlier, is a tool I use all the time. It's free. There are paid versions, but you can do a lot with the free. Google Forms, if your club has a Gmail account, you can use Google Forms and different things as well. The link that I gave you is actually a Google site. It's a way so instead of me having to do a PDF and give or print handouts, I can drop this link, or I can put this link onto my program or on the bottom of my agenda that has the resources available digitally to whomever it is. Saves you paper, saves you having to worry about transporting things back and forth, but both sets of participants can get the information at the same time. So feel free to look through those resources later, and I'll try to show you a few more examples of things that you can use online as well. So we want to address both audiences. One of these things that I think is super important is making sure that when you're setting up your hybrid event, you want to make sure that your speaker, your podium, has a camera that's facing them, so you can see them where my hand is in my face, but also that they can see the audience online as well as the people in the room. I am a big fan of having either a laptop right in front of the podium, so that the speaker can see themselves and they can see the people online as well as the people in the room. And just notes for all of us is we have to look at that camera. We've been trained to look at this camera, but we also now, when we're in a hybrid environment, can't just stare at the camera. We need to look at the camera and also glance at the people in the room. It becomes more pivotal. In the same way, when we were in person and you looked and you made sure you made eye contact with everyone in the room, camera and room. So we have to start to train our skills to be slightly different in that way. You want to get a team of moderators. You want to have someone, specifically tasked with monitoring what's happening online and engaging with those people to make sure, can they hear? Are they able to see? Are there any questions? If we're on a break and there's chatter, is someone having chatter in there? I'm a member of Club 407, Past District Governors and Directors Club. And one of the great things that we do for our hybrid meetings is somebody on virtually every meeting is doing online table topics with the online participants while we're eating dinner. We do have a dinner club and a dinner period. So these are intentional things you can plan based on what your club is doing. You want to make sure there's good feedback loops. I'm going to share with you one way to feedback loop. I'm going to give you a link, and you all are going to be able to give me feedback directly. Full disclosure, I'm a Google addict. I totally utilize the Google suite of products, and there's so many different things there. So the first link I gave you is actually a Google site, something that I just set up on Google, just does not take any particular planning, even though I'm a software developer, didn't utilize any of those skills to do that. I'm going to give you right now a link in the chat. That is a Google form where you can tell me what you thought about this presentation and any feedback. So imagine how you can use these for your meetings. If you're having love notes, perhaps you create a Google form and the VPE can then distribute the information from that later. They're all different types of ways to do that. So you want to also make sure that there's ways for feedback in person and online. Right now, we're all online, but I'm a big fan of using the chat. Actively encourage and intentionally tell people to put your answers in the chat, use the emojis, use the reactions, and acknowledge them. So that you're not just saying, hey, I can say, raise your hand, and the people in the room can raise their hand, but everybody online can actually raise their hand with the Zoom reactions. We want to be intentional to make sure we're customizing things that get our whole audience. You want to rehearse. Once you've done a few meetings, it'll be second nature. But there are things you may need to practice with other members of your team. So for example, last night, I managed our entire meeting, which was crazy because I was also doing another role. For our next hybrid meeting, I have 2 of the members are actually going to sit, and I'm going to tell them what to do so they can learn how to manage meetings. You will want to consider things like, if my speaker is online, making sure someone spotlights them so that they're wide on the screen in the room for everyone to see. And everyone's not looking at the same Zoom view that we may be looking at the grid and trying to strain to see, well, what is she doing? Is she moving? What I can't see? Is she showing me something? You want to think about, when do we need to spotlight? When do we need to share screens? Or can the speakers online see the timer? Is your timer in person and online? You think about all these things in advance so that you can provide clear instructions. So at the very beginning, or on your agendas, or you can put into your online chats, directions on what's going to happen, or as the meeting goes on along. So for example, you may say, especially as you're transitioning, we had to explain, okay, our first speaker last night was online. So the people online were able to send her love notes directly through the chat. The people that were in the room just emailed her their feedback or texted her, because everybody knows each other. For the speaker that was in the room, the majority of the participants were online. They all sent them to one person's computer, and then because the speaker wasn't actually online for them to message her, we provided her that feedback afterwards. So whatever it is, you want to provide those clear instructions. And if you can think those scenarios in advance, you can actually print them on your agenda or have someone dropping them in the chat. The biggest key is to maintain a balanced focus throughout the event. So a couple of other things that I will show you now that we can do is, you can have a virtual guest book. Hopefully, since we've all been meeting online, maybe you've had one already. I hope you've had one. I'll drop a sample of one in the chat for one of my clubs. You don't need to sign it or anything, but it will give you an example of what it could look like. So the same way you may have your form in your book, you can have a guest book. Now, I don't usually use this whole link. We have like a special bit.ly link that lists the club name, that makes it a little bit prettier when we put in the chat. But those are things that you can use there. And I don't see anybody has submitted any questions yet. So I will say, if you have any questions as well, you can actually go ahead and drop them into the chat, or drop them into Menti, or raise your hand and I will answer them as we go. I will show you, I'm going to share my screen again. I'll show you a couple other things that you can actually do with Menti. I will confess that I actually use Menti a lot for work things and for just personal things, for parties or virtual meetings and things of that nature, because Menti comes with a ton of different templates and samples that you can use. So I've done an interactive quiz with Menti, for example. Let's see if I can share my screen and show you a couple of things that I've used for meetings. I've used them in meetings just for within speeches and not even as overall meetings. Let's see. Okay, you can see my screen again. Can you see my screen? Confirm someone, yes? Okay, I see those thumbs. And I am totally, feel free to unmute and interact. I am totally here for you. So here, Menti, now you can sign into this. Again, I'm using just a free account. They do have templates and things in there, but I did a particular meeting where we had I think we were the theme was give people their roses. So one of the things you can see, the very first slide that I had here is the instruction slide that gets generated on its own. Then I added a picture here and you can actually see, let's see if I can present so you can actually see it. We had an opportunity I asked questions in my speech and then shared the results later. So one of the things as I was giving my speech as a Toastmaster, I was saying, think about, what are some reasons we might give people their roses? And instead of people all filling them in the chat, they were dropping them into this Menti, and I was able to share it when I was ready. Is look at all these different reasons that people thought, and then it becomes something that I can actually also take away. So that's one of the features that Menti gives you to use. They have word clouds, they have quizzes, they have all kinds of templates that are built in that you don't have to sit there and figure out, okay, how do I put together a quiz? Now this is the Google form that I showed you, but you're seeing, so you have the other view, that Google form that I dropped into the chat. This is just something simple that I created and can add more questions. Some of my clubs have used this for ballot counters while we were virtually. This is something that you can also do. You can create your ballot form, have your table topic speakers, your best speaker, whatever you're voting for, have feedback. You can do those things on there. I see one question in the chat is, should the moderator or one person be assigned to spotlight virtual speakers? I do think that, in my opinion, it is something that for a meeting, you want to have a designated person to do that, or a designated couple of people to do it. In bigger events, I've had things, I will have somebody dedicated to actually assign specific people. So for example, when we did a candidate showcase, I will say, Heather, you are specifically responsible for spotlighting David Flores and Josh Byerman, who are on the panel. And Joni, I want you to make sure you are responsible for spotlighting Anna and Cyrus Cruz, so that all the people can be spotlighted quickly. So for bigger events, I definitely think you can assign it down to even individual people, and you can have that done. During your meeting, you may want to maybe have a designated Zoom role that will say, or a designated role that's doing those moderator functions. So that person isn't serving as a timer, isn't serving as Toastmaster, other things. That person's goal is to be your online engagement coordinator, so to speak, that they know that they should be monitoring, okay, well, now the table topics question is going to somebody in the room. We don't need to spotlight there, but we now need to spotlight the person online when the table topic speaker is online. And I see David, I saw you had a hand, sir. David, your audio is giving Mickey Mouse, and I cannot understand a word you were saying, although it sounds absolutely amazing.
How's it now?
Much better. Now I can hear you. That's the voice I know and love.
Computers always drive me nuts. And anyway, I was suggesting that the sergeant at arms should be at least a co-host, since they actually monitor the room. They should be the ones monitoring the online members or guests, especially, to verify that they're actually where they want to be, and if there's any disruptive behavior online, that they can control that also.
I think that is true for bigger events. Yes. The reason I don't always suggest that in the club format, though, in the meetings, the sergeant at arms may be the Toastmaster for the evening, and we don't want them to always be pigeonholed to that. So it can be a great opportunity for members to get more comfortable and learn by making it a dedicated role that it can be rotated through. So today, Carol is our online engagement person, but tomorrow Natalie is, and next meeting is Radhika. And let's see, I see also Maisie asked, could you please define the terms give people their roses? Oh, so give people their roses is just a term, definitely an American term that's just for basically, because we have a tradition of funerals, people usually bring flowers and do wreaths. So giving them their roses is a shortened form of don't basically give them their kudos now while they're alive. Let them smell their flowers while they're fresh because they can't smell them when they're dead, which has gotten shrunk down to give them their roses. But the sentiment is tell people now how you feel about them and how you appreciate them while you have the opportunity, because as we all know, moments are fleeting and we never know when we won't be able to do that in person again. So
Thank you.
no problem. Thank you for that clarification. And I see Rebecca. Okay, so Rebecca asked a great question. How do we encourage members to take on this kind of interactive technology, especially when they're not super tech savvy? I love that question because I am the tech savvy person in most of my clubs. And we literally had this last night. So invite them to help. There were 2 people that weren't tech savvy that came to help me set up to watch, to see what they needed to do. That's important so that I might be sick. I might have a business trip and we still need to have that meeting. So we train them and we grow, just like we do with everything else as Toastmasters. The first time somebody is a Toastmaster, they're going to stumble and we're going to support them and help them. And that's the same thing we do here. We help them along. So if I was to say, hey, Hovey, you're going to do this for me this week. And Hovey's saying, I don't know why Janelle asked me to do that. She must be losing her mind. But I'm not going to have Hovey do it by himself. I'm going to say, hey, sit next to me. And I may tell you, hey, here, do this, or shadow me. Or take a moment. Someone could do a speech in the club and go over how to do those things and demonstrate it. There's all kinds of ways to do that. Having a pre-meeting session, maybe having a separate session where you just let people practice the technology. So those are good ways to do it. And Marjorie, I saw your hand.
In response to David's comment about Sergeant at Arms and yours, Janelle, about the Sergeant at Arms could be the Toastmaster, also, we may have forgotten to train the Sergeant at Arms to be comfortable as Zoom host and Zoom background technology. Even though we've been Zooming since 2020, we may not have fully done our due diligence and training everybody.
Right. And this is absolutely, which is why I say this is an opportunity for clubs to grow. When you first start out doing hybrid, you're going to get to learn skills that you can then use in other places and at work. And it doesn't take a lot. My club does not have any equipment. The only equipment that we happen to have already was a projector. So our setup yesterday was my work laptop, not my work laptop, but my personal laptop was the podium camera and microphone. I happened to have a Bluetooth speaker, and that was how the people in the room could hear the people online. I had an old computer that I accidentally spilled coffee on and ruined. Doesn't work for sound or anything, but the camera works great. We plugged that into the projector. It was facing the room so that the people online could see one speaker view that we named lectern and one that was named the room from that computer. And that's where the projector was connected to that so that they can see the people. We happen to be in a room where we have a screen. So it doesn't take a lot. We did it with 2 computers and a Bluetooth speaker. You could do an iPhone or someone's iPad. It could be a camera that is on a stand pointing to the speaker. If you don't have a projector, you might have a solid wall a solid white wall that you can actually project on and see those things. Or you may be in a room. I have one club that as we were charting out, somebody brought the monitor screen as we were finding our final location. So they would literally just bring a monitor and connect it to that computer and sit it at the end of the table so you could see the people that were online. There are 101 ways to do those things. You just have to be willing to give it a try. All right, let's see. Do we
Not
have
250 ways, like 250 ways to wash dishes?
I think there are I think there's 1,000,001 ways to do dishes. I don't know if they're all right, but there's 1,000,001 ways to do it. And what works for me may be different for you. So David Flores and I are in a club, 407. As I mentioned, we meet at a hotel. So they have a built-in screen for us. And we happen to be fortunate enough to have a member who brings 2 cameras specifically. And then we connect one laptop to a monitor. There's all kinds of different ways that you can use these particular things. So I know we talked about Menti, which I use a lot for a number of different things, but in the first link I gave you, there's tons of other tools. Some of them are free, some are others. Blackboard, I know some people use that as a learning management software. Zoom, if you're not sure, if you're using Zoom, if your club is using Zoom, I highly encourage you to go to the Zoom website. If you go to zoom.us/releases, their release notes are very clear and they're constantly adding new features. And you might be surprised at what things get added each week or each month that you can suddenly use to make your meetings intentional. Think about your theme. I love a good theme. So the same way we would plan for a Aloha luau meeting, we're going to get tablecloths, we're going to get pineapples, we're going to do those things. So how do we make sure the online version is the same? We maybe have music piping through the Zoom and I'm saying Zoom because Zoom is my default, but whatever platform it is, we can make backgrounds, Zoom backgrounds to go with the theme. We can have music playing both Zoom and online in the break for the music and themes. A lot of these things are very simple for us to do. We just need to stop and plan. So most of it is thinking about with your club, as a club officer, what resources do we have? What can we bring in? Look at your meeting space. Where are the plugs? Do we need an extension cord? Do we need a power strip? Is there enough lighting? One of the things that we did before we had our first hybrid club meeting was to arrange a time to go in and set up. We had 2 officers in the middle of the day join the Zoom. 2 of us went into the actual physical location. We started plugging things in, started testing. Hey, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear this? Okay. I had the person online sing your ABCs as we walked around the room to make sure we could hear them. Hey, how does this camera position look? How does this look? So we did all of that. So we already knew how to set it up. We looked and said, okay, we're going to need an extension cord here. We're going to need something to raise our platform, our projector up to reach this particular projector screen. There's tons of different things that are available there. Now, I gave you this link, so I'm not going to touch all of these, but there's Kahoot, there's quizzes, there's all kinds of things. Mentimeter, I highly encourage you to give it a try. It is a one-stop shop. You can do quizzes, you can do Q&As, you can do all kinds of different things with that particular tool. So I absolutely love it. And the beauty of the Mentimeter is that you can actually also go back and you can then share that. So I can actually, if I wanted to print the word cloud out and share that with the other members, that's fine. And I acknowledge Joni and Heather, thank you. That you can use all of those things. The biggest thing I think that's important in trying a hybrid meeting is just do it. Don't be scared. A lot of us are like, oh my God, I don't know enough technology. I don't know how to do these things. You absolutely can. You can connect a phone. Someone in your club can connect a Bluetooth speaker. And we pretty much somebody has a laptop or somebody has an iPad. It doesn't have to wait until you have the equipment. Our first meeting was literally using our computers and a speaker. Now that once we see, okay, this is something we're going to consistently do, then we may invest in getting a Bluetooth speaker on sale. That is the club speaker. We may invest in, just an iPad that we use for the club that becomes the camera instead of needing to use somebody's computer. But those are things that you can do later. The biggest thing is just give it a try and get started with what you want. And then I know my time is winding down, so I want to allow time for you guys to get your questions in. So you can raise your hand, you can drop them in the chat, or you can do that. And I will remind you, so my contact information is also available, and the list of some of the list of resources. This is not an all-inclusive list, but these are some different tools and platforms that you can look into and play with and see, hey, what works for us. Google Forms is free and a great tool. We've used it for our ballots. We've used it to get speaker feedback. We use it for guest books in a couple of my clubs, which is really great because when you do that, the moment a guest submits their information, it just goes into a shared spreadsheet that any of the club officers can see and follow up. And we use that. We use that to add them to Free Toast hosts so we can add them to the guest list and invite them back for future events. All right, I see a question, and it is Marjorie. Yes.
Janell, I only agree halfway with your comment about hybrid. Just do it. I think you need to clarify practice first, at least. If you just do it, in my opinion, and it is a bad experience, that it really fumbles on the in-person side and the Zoom side, it can be very discouraging. It can say, especially if there were guests may say, I don't want to come back.
Well, Marjorie, I want to clarify, though. I didn't say just do it, just go have a meeting. What things did I talk about? One of the things we said is rehearse and practice. We said go set up the site and test it out, right? So we didn't just walk into that venue yesterday and say, okay, let's do it. We intentionally had a pre-meeting and went through it and practiced and made sure that it worked. So just doing it, when I say just do it, is don't sit back and say, we can't do this. You have to start somewhere. It starts with the club officers coming together and talking about what resources do they have. Hey, does anybody have a camera? Does anyone have a Bluetooth speaker? The prep is in there. But what I'm saying by just do it is just decide to move forward and start working towards it. It may not be perfect the first one. So when we did yesterday, we didn't do a lot of advertising to say, hey, we're back open, we're hybrid. It was only members. Now we have had a successful meeting for our next meeting. So for this particular club, we meet every week, but 2 of the meetings due to cost for the facility. So 2 of our meetings will be hybrid. The other meetings a month will be online. Now we have some more confidence where we can go into the next meeting and maybe invite former members who we know said, we're not coming back to Toastmasters while we're on Zoom. We want to be in person. We can let them know that that's available to them. So just do it doesn't mean you have to jump in 500% immediately today, but you do need to get started. You do need to have a talk with your executive committee and say, okay, what resources do we have? You do need to set up a practice. You do need to, as we started out talking about, be intentional. What things are in your meeting and how do you think you're going to do them? You may have to adjust them as you go, but you do need to be intentional. How are we going to collect ballots? How are we going to deal with the evaluations? How are we going to do our agendas? Are we going to drop it into the chat? Are we going to have printed ones? All of those things, you still have to do your planning. But that's all a part of just doing it.
Thank you for clarifying it. Thank you.
No problem.
Clarification.
I love that. I want to go to Rebecca. I want to make sure I have time for anybody else that has questions too. Rebecca.
All right. Thanks, Janell. This is so great. I love this kind of creativity and all the many things that we can do. So I'm wondering if you can give any comments as in the context of contest season is coming up. And I feel like contests should be so fun. Like, I know they're very serious and there's like certain times where it has to be really quiet and all this other stuff. But are there the ways that we can, make it fun in between things? And what's been your experience using this kind of stuff in the context?
Oh, you are asking the wrong person. So as I said, I was a part of the District 1 team who really we jumped in and made it an adventure. So one of those things is we were intentional. When the audience comes in, we already have music playing. And if we know the contest theme, we will have music playing onto that theme. One of my favorites, well, it's hard to pick just two favorites, but one of my favorites, someone had a baseball theme. So we had music like Take Me Out to the Ball Game, Take Me Out to the Park. We had that kind of music that was playing at the appropriate times during breaks before the meeting and that. The functionaries were dressed up like baseball players. They had their team shirts, they had their hats, they had a background that was baseball themed. We had another one that was really great. They did an Alice. So this was the whole division had an Alice in Wonderland theme. So each of the area contests were related. So one of them was around the Cheshire Cat. The next one had the caterpillar and different things. So the functionaries would dress like Alice in Wonderland characters. Then for the division contest, the themes were Wonderland related, and then you had all of those people that you saw. So one area director, for example, was the Mad Hatter during his contest. But then you had him as a Mad Hatter, you had Alice, you had all these different characters at the division contest, and it was a hoot. And we had that music, Disney princesses, all different types of things, but it's intentional. So one of the things we do is we have a timed agenda, and the agenda says, okay, Joni, at this time, here's the music you need to play. It says, Macy, at this time, you need to go ahead and spotlight the Toastmaster. And David, you're going to spotlight the winners as they're announced so that we bring them into the screen with the Toastmaster. So it's all about the intention of saying, okay, here's the things that we want to do, and here's what needs to happen. So planning is key. And it's very simple things. Anybody can share music on Zoom. And it might be a prep session. Have a session with your team. Let's practice this. Okay, Heather, you go ahead and share music. Christina, can you go ahead and share your screen? We would have slides that had information very much like Joni did this morning that maybe had upcoming announcements that were playing with the music in between that time. We've had some that have had games. Mentimeter, we've had those. We've done at the district level, we've had text into this number to enter a raffle. Everybody in the room and online can text. 99% of our members are going to have a smart device and be able to text into those things. So there's all kinds of things to do. If you can dream it, you can achieve it. And with hybrid, the world is your oyster, because you no longer have to have members say, I got stuck at work, I was in traffic, I couldn't make it. They can still join. And I think that's the beauty, because many people are back in the office. Everybody's not working from home. So you just give yourself more flexibility for more members. The tools and resources are out there. You can always reach out to me, look at those resources. I know that Heather is going to always have learning labs and different things. Perhaps, I know she and I have talked about maybe be doing a session, won't be learning lab time. Unfortunately, it conflicts with my church schedule, but you can ask for the training for some of these things too. Like we have a club in my district, District 1, that is a Zoom Masters club. So all we do, the purpose is to practice your Zoom skills. There are all kinds of opportunities available. The world is an oyster. Again, I'm going to say, just do it, but always that means practice, preparation, and enjoy and learn from it. And with that, I will say thank you, Heather, and thank you to all of you for your opportunity to share. I'm very passionate about it, as you can tell. Do click on that one link. If you can give me feedback, I'd love to hear from you, because it's also my opportunity to grow. Have a great training. And as we say in District 100, let's go for the gold. Back to you, Madam Program